and going out into those communities. People are having very difficult times even getting to the jobs. So why not take those units to the people and have counselors on the buses providing them with the information, linking them with jobs and opportunities, and someone else who helps to provide the counseling for those individuals. I've run that past many corporate executives and the Maryland State Department of Economic Development, and they say that this is the kind of program that will work for our people. Thank you so much. And excuse me because I do have to leave to take those important votes.
The next question, and this is for Ms. Dixon and Mr. Gutierrez. What are your plans for the Northeast Police District, our district, which is the city's largest geographically and serves 1/3 of the city's tax base? Ms. Dixon or Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you for that question. And first, let me say this. You know, one of the things that I've been able to do over the last several years when I served as mayor is be able to reduce crime all over the city, quality of life, violent offenders, etc. Now, I understand the issue in this particular district, and one thing that we need to do is we need to move the Northeast Police District more centrally within the area because this is a large district in population. We also need to create some additional mini districts within this area because of the land mass of Northeast and the makeup of Northeast. And so what I'm willing to do is, one, build a new police district centrally located within the Northeast area as well as satellite. But the other piece that's so key and is important in order to bring back police officers and the trust in our communities and neighborhood is permanent foot posts. We need permanent foot posts throughout the district so that those officers can get to know the communities and the neighbors and vice versa. And police officers can get out of the car and not have to move all over the district. And that's something that is in my plan, a 4-point plan that I created. By creating that, as well as enhancing our civilian review board and working with our officers in the communities along. So I understand the complexity of this, but we've got to move the district from over by Morgan and put it centrally. Thank you.
So regardless of where the physical district is located, it needs to be an efficient, effective police district that is responsive to the needs of the community. I've been to neighborhood associations all throughout the Northeast District, and I've heard wildly inconsistent tales of people's interactions with the police department. So one of the first things we need to do is make sure that we're being consistent across the board with how we interact with residents. That means additional training for our officers, and that means making sure that they are on foot patrols more, but not just saying go out on foot patrol or go interact with people. There needs to be a measure of accountability. We need to establish clear, measurable goals for our officers so they know exactly what's expected of them, and then we need to hold them accountable. And I'll give you one easy example. Each officer on foot patrol will be required to interact with 5 residents per day. That is a clear, measurable goal that they know when they leave the house each day, they are to talk with 5 people. They're going to log those interactions, and then we're going to have people go behind them and follow up randomly with people and say, hey, did Officer Jones interact with you today, sir? Okay, how was that interaction? Do you have some feedback for him? And then we'll give that officer that feedback so that they can continue to learn and grow and do their jobs better. But without specific goals in place and an accountability system to make sure that they're meeting those goals, it's all just more talk and talk and talk and no results. That's the difference that I want to make as your mayor, is putting those specific measurable goals in place and ensuring that there's accountability behind them. Thank you.
All right, the next questions is for Mr. Mosby, Ms. Murray, and Mr. Walden. As you know, the Community Services Program, which provides low-level offenders an opportunity to pay back their communities with service instead of incarceration, has been defunded by Governor Hogan. Would you commit to funding the program from the city budget? And if yes, how would you pay for it?
So when we talk about public safety, either we talk about on the front end or we talk about on the back end. And unfortunately, we always talk about it on the back end. We must develop ways of getting to our children before they get to the criminal justice system. On the city council, I understand and know the importance of it, and I championed a bill called Ban the Box, which basically provides ex-offenders the right to a level playing field during the time of applications and the time of interviews for private employers. So I understand and know the importance of this. When we talk about programs like this, diverting individuals to public service, diverting individuals to opportunities for improvement is critically important. And we've seen that, specifically when we talk about things like felonies. Unfortunately, our young folks get felonies on their record at a very young age, and those felonies stick with them for the rest of their lives. It impacts them from a housing, to jobs, to schooling perspective, and it really is counterproductive to our community. As the next mayor of Baltimore, I will not only fund this program, but I will also develop an office for our returning citizens, which will be a one-stop shop to allow individuals the ability to get identification cards, wraparound service, employment opportunities, workforce development, pro bono legal services for any other issues that they have on their records. We have to develop ways to allow folks in the game, and by making it harder for folks returning home, we only develop ways of turning up our recidivism rate. You know, I'm really disappointed that the governor decided to cut this program, cut the funding from this program, because when you look at the empirical data of it, we see the results. These are the results that we need for our citizens and results to truly rebuild our communities.
Thank you.
I am strongly in favor of these types of programs, to giving people second chances. I'm an advocate for those who don't have the opportunity to be successful, and it's going to take team leadership. It's going to take everybody's effort. With Governor Hogan defunding that program, that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't other programs that are funding those types of programs that's needed for our citizens who need to be given a chance in our communities to prove themselves different. We need to make it accessible for everyone. Everyone desires a chance. Everyone desires to be successful in what they put their hand to. I am strongly in favor, but though I am strongly in favor of it, right now I cannot tell you that I would fund the program at this time. I need to look at do a thorough review of the budget to make sure the funding is available from the city, that all agencies are adequately funded, and I will make an effort to certainly make sure that funding is available in the fiscal year, to make sure that that is possible for every citizen of Baltimore. We need to do this together. We cannot resolve all of these issues with one person. Everybody has to be a part of the team. Everybody has to be included. So we need to, stop judging our citizens and allow them the opportunity to be successful. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Walden.
The key here is low-level offenders, and sometimes it's difficult to define what is or who is a low-level offender. It is absolutely imperative that people who have committed offenses, committed crimes, let's call them what they are, be given another chance if they can and are willing to accept the responsibility that goes along with that second chance. And this is not only a government function, by the way. I'm not satisfied with the idea that Governor Hogan decided against this program, even though I'm a member of the same party. I understand perhaps why he did it. But the money is available. The money is available because there is a great deal of bloated bureaucracy in the city of Baltimore that can be reduced, and the money can be found therein. Furthermore, private industry can be called in to help with these programs and get these people back into society where they earn what they earn their own way, and they make good citizens, which as many of them should be as can possibly be done.
Thank you. All right. This next question is directed to Mr. Warnock and Councilman Stokes. Dog parks improve public health by incentivizing pet registration and spay and neutering. They also improve resident participation in public safety by establishing a destination for dog walkers to congregate, keep their eyes and their ears open, what's happening in the community. However, in some locations, the city wants the residents to purchase the land from the city and construct and maintain the facilities on their own. How will you make this process and other community investments more practical?
Well, thank you, David Warnock for mayor, and I want your vote on April 26th. Yeah, this is just another example of how we've lost the concept of customer service at City Hall, and why this election is a clear choice between the political status quo and a different direction. The citizens of this city and our neighborhoods, our great neighborhoods throughout our city, should have dog walks, they should have dog parks. You know, at the end of the day, we have 16,000 vacant houses and countless vacant commercial properties. I have a plan to put hundreds of people to work while we demolish and recycle those houses. In fact, I started a company, Green Job Works, that's 40% owned by the Center for Urban Families, the workforce development organization that I was the chairman of for 13 years, and 60% owned by the manager. We have 125 people doing demolition and recycling in our city today. In fact, they did the demolition and recycling of Green Street Academy. And when we do demolition and recycling of our cities, we need to give people a lot next to their house. The pioneers that live in our city, that stay in our city, let's do what they do in Detroit. Give people a side yard. Give our neighborhoods a dog walk. Why sell property to people when we have plenty of vacant property around this town? Empower people. Create a culture of customer service in City Hall. We will restore that. We will restore that in my administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I thank you for inviting us all in here this evening to have this conversation. I apologize, the rain delay caused me a later delay. So, on the matter of whether it's dog park, dog walk, or other such items, the issue is that we are not planning, and we're not allowing the communities, the neighbors, to give their plan, to talk to us, to say to us what the community should look like in total. Not just what we are doing is piecemealing. So someone comes with a thought, someone comes with an idea, someone comes with whatever it is, and it's in the zone, not in the zone, and then we just make this decision randomly. We have to plan our communities in a way that it fits the needs and desires of the greater majority of us who live there. And so we should plan a park. We should plan where we're putting our retailing. I know we think we do that, but it's not happening downtown. That's not how we plan, and we have to do it differently. If I can just jump, and I'm supportive of the process that makes that better. I just want to mention that in communities like this and other communities across the city, we need to bring in a community court. We had that idea many years ago. Former mayors said they didn't want to do it, not Sheila, Martin actually, but didn't want to do it. A community court which takes these quote-unquote low-level crimes, but they're crimes of quality and a displacement and displeasure rather, and put them in another place out of the criminal court. They're still criminal acts.
Time.
Thank you, but we decide them in a different way, and you get a chance to be there and speak to those matters.
Thanks.
Logan is here as
Oh,
well.
Mr. Logan?
Thank you.
Just to go over, we've got a whole series of questions, and we've clustered the candidates, so each group of candidates is answering a different question. As you can see, we're jumping all over the place. Next question goes to Ms. Embry, Mr. McKesson, and Mr. Harris. Whether it's violent crime, property crime, or any other type of nuisance crime, it's constant in our Baltimore City lives. What is your plan for reducing crime?
Thank you. So this is what I've spent a lot of my career doing. As chief of the criminal division for the Attorney General's office and as deputy state's attorney, we're working with law enforcement. We achieved the greatest reduction in violent crime and overall crime in a generation. And we saw homicides under 200 for the first time in 40 years. I know how to do it, and I know we can do it again. The Baltimore Sun has said, I have the best plan for solving the biggest problem facing the city. reducing violence, and restoring faith in our criminal justice system. And I want to talk about two parts of a very large comprehensive plan. The first is a district-by-district strategy focused on violent crime and identifying in every police district, working with our federal, state, local partners, the people who are driving violence in that community, identifying them and bringing effective cases against them. And the second piece that I talk about in the plan says, what do we need to do in every community, and having micro-targeting in every community, so we're identifying what is the problem, whether it could be violent crime, it could be car break-ins, it could be home invasion, whatever it is, we have an approach designed specifically for that community, limited only by the nature of the problem. And this is the work that I have done successfully, and I've done it from violent to public nuisance crimes to street-level drug dealing, going in, identifying who's responsible, and moving them out. And my plan talks a lot about how to reduce crime, but I also talk about the interventions to avoid people entering the criminal justice altogether. And I talk about how do we really end the war on drugs in the city, and how do we stop locking people up from being poor and addicted to drugs. And we talk about it, we don't do it. And other cities have figured it out, we have to figure it out too. We have a long way to go in the city to make our criminal justice system fair and effective, but I've been doing the work to do just that. Thank you very much.
So how do we reduce crime in the city? And I touched on this briefly previously in my last response. But I look at crime slightly different. What do we know about crime? We know that 75% of felony crimes are committed by individuals who have prior interaction with the law or are repeat offenders. So we want to have an immediate impact on crime reduction. We have to focus on preventing offenders from re-offending. We have to break this cycle where an individual who is in poverty resorts to street crime, they get in trouble, they go to jail, they get out, they can't get a job, so they end up going back to the streets and go back to jail. We have to focus on breaking that cycle. And my plan is to create a comprehensive economic platform that encompasses creating living wage jobs in Baltimore City by first bringing industry back to the city. And that industry would be solar and clean energy, manufacturing and production, which will put thousands and thousands of people to work. Secondly, we have to understand we have to restore the relationships between the community and the police. Our police officers cannot expect community members to hold other community members accountable when they break the law if they are not holding other officers accountable when they break the law. And so we have to make sure that we're putting in comprehensive training mechanisms that have true community-based policing true community-based policing tactics, which means that the community is involved in the process from training and recruitment all the way through substantive review should an infraction occur. Right now, our commissioner has taken steps in the right direction with moving back to post commands and also community foot patrols, but we know the community-based policing is much more extensive than that, and that includes cultural competency training and making sure that the community is consistently involved in the process. Thank you.
So for the past 18 months, this has been the focus of my work. I think about my recent meeting last week with Loretta Lynch in the White House and President Obama, at least before that, and Bernie and Hillary, talking about this work at all levels. I know that the safety of our communities is not predicated on the presence of police. If I ask you where you feel the most safe, it's likely not in a room full of police. It's in a place where there's people who love you, there's food and shelter. When we think about the police, we often think about them in three buckets. One is around prevention, but the prevention work isn't about policing, it's about strong schools, families, making sure people have access to jobs. When we think about the response to crime, that is police work, but not just police work. We know so many people in our communities have mental health trauma. And if we have a gun first and a police first response to all trauma, that just makes trauma cyclical. So I think about somebody I talked to who said that she called for help because someone was going to commit suicide and an officer showed up. That doesn't end the trauma, that just exacerbates it. So we have to have a different response to trauma that is not only gun first. And the last is about solving crime, and that is police work, but that can't happen when there's not accountability and trust in the police department. So I'm calling for clear reforms. The DOJ should expand their current review to include school police and internal affairs. In Baltimore City, it's not against the rules to hog tie or chokehold people. If there's a deadly force case, officers are not automatically drug tested. That doesn't make sense. So we have to restore integrity to the police department with clear accountability structures. It's the work I've been focused on. It's work that I've talked to so many people around the country and around the city about. And we can do these things. We just haven't had a mayor who's had the political will or the skill to make it happen.
We're moving on to the next question, so we go back up in the rotation. So we're now back up to Mr. Young and Ms. Walsh. We have two urban renewal plans in Northeast Baltimore that were enacted by the City Council However, the zoning permits office grants use and occupancy permits that are not permitted in the urban renewal plan. How would you ensure that the urban renewal plans are complied with by the permits office?
So I think the answer to this question is actually quite simple. It's something that we practically deal with, especially here in Northeast Baltimore, because there have been a lot of things that we want to do to make our neighborhood, a better place. And the reality is, when you talk about government, government is amenable to whoever is the person that you put in charge. And we've had people who have been in office before, who are running for mayor, and to put them back in charge would not change the way things like this happen. So that's why people like me are running for mayor, because we can change these types of things. And it really takes making city government a government that works for our community associations and for our community neighbors. For example, we have a lot of community liaisons that liaison to the different districts, right? And a lot of times they specifically just pass information down from City Hall to our community association presidents. It really should be the other way around. So when we've got these types of permits that are needed, these types of individuals can be the people who can help facilitate making sure that we're getting things through, facilitate moving the red tape away. And that's what is required to make our city a better place. Right now, I'll give you a great example. If it wasn't for Ryan Dorsey, right, and people like him who really championed, getting a bike lane on the construction of the new bridge for Harford Road, we wouldn't have it. That shouldn't happen. We shouldn't have to have advocates push for those types of things, especially when they're already in the plan. So when you elect me, Calvin Young, as the next mayor, not only are you getting somebody who's born and bred here, but you're getting somebody who understands these challenges and understands how to make sure that we're doing the right things so that we're not making the challenges, but instead we're being successful and working for our people.
Cindy Walsh for Mayor of Baltimore. The first thing you have to do when you're looking at urban renewal as a new mayor is recognize that we've never had a system in City Hall that actually follows the federal guidelines of all of our urban renewal. All of the enterprise zone policies, all of the Baltimore HUD building, all of the funds that come to fund our affordable housing, rebuild our communities, is all being directed to downtown and to all of that fluent development, all the corporate campuses. And so that's not how urban renewal is supposed to be done. If you are a candidate that's not going to do that, if you're going to rebuild all of the communities and you're going to look at all of these contracts, the TIFs, the enterprise zones, the corporate subsidy, and get that funding out to the communities. When you do that and you rebuild the oversight and accountability that finds all of the fraud, misappropriation, corruption, you're going to be looking at all of this permitting process. You're going to be making sure that all of the agencies that are tasked with oversight and accountability are looking at all those details and making sure that it actually works right. That is what my entire platform is about. And I'm the only one who removes the idea of Baltimore development in that master plan in order to do that. Thank you.
If we get through these questions, we may have time for closing statements. But we've got a whole list of questions. All right, moving on we're going back to Ms. Dixon, Mr. Gutierrez, and Mr. Logan. You're in this round. Our small business owners rely on facade grants to update and maintain their attractive storefronts. However, annual fees are assessed to a business owner that improves the local quality of his or her business, thereby defeating the purpose of the grant. How will you help our small business owners invest in our Main Street without paying annual fees on these improvements?
Thank you. Good evening, folks. I'm Frank Logan, independent candidate for mayor. Once again, as we've been saying, is removing barriers to that point. The signage is part of the permit process. So going back into communities, having communities identify what is the size of the signage and everything, and then process that through. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. Thank you.
So as we know here in the Northeast, small businesses are the lifeblood of a community, and they need to be supported. Most of our small business owners are not living in penthouses somewhere else in the city. They are barely making enough money to pay their employees and provide money for themselves and their families as well. We can't be nickel and diming them across the board, especially when it goes exactly against the behaviors we want them to have. We want them to beautify their buildings so that more people will want to come and live here and shop here. So why on earth would we tax them for doing that? Makes absolutely no sense to me. I would waive those fees, flat out, because I don't want the money. I want the business thriving. Because if we have a thriving small business community, we will make that money back times 100. So the important thing to remember is that when it comes to small businesses, we need to put as much effort into making them succeed as we do in making the big corporations succeed. That's why, similar to the Baltimore Development Corporation, I'm going to create a Baltimore Small Business Development Corporation that will be equal in stature and in talent and in funding and in support from the mayor's office. Because I want just as many thriving small businesses as I want $100 million projects. Thank you.
Thank you. In my plan, Shared Prosperities and Economic Development, I would encourage you to go on my website, SheilaDixonForMayor.com. Is the Sun paper rated it as the most comprehensive plan. And Main Street is a key piece of that plan, because in Northeast Baltimore, you have a very strong Main Street. And what I'm proposing in my plan moving forward, because Main Streets over the last 5 years under this mayor and city council has not been a priority. It has always been a priority for me because I know the importance of it. And what I'm going to do is put additional money into Main Street so we can extend and expand opportunities for additional small businesses. Because all over the city, the one thing that I want to strive to work towards is to get people to begin to live, work, and play in their communities. And by doing that, it's by extending the grants and opportunities through Main Street. And so I'm going to only have 90 seconds now, but please go on my website. My Main Street plan talks about extending and expanding grants for small businesses, attracting additional businesses, looking at and surveying the needs of a community so that you can have a cleaners, a shoe shop, because I still use it, I hope other people do, as well as other types of businesses that are going to enhance restaurants, etc. in the Main Street. So I'm a real supporter and advocate for Main Streets, and I know the importance of that. And so we will meet with the members of the Main Street and talk about some of the challenges so that we can work together. It's about a partnership.
All right. The next question is to Mr. Mosby, Mr. Murray, and Mr. Walden. We host a lot of events and festivals in our neighborhoods, and this is across the city, not just Northeast, to retain our sense of community and to entice new residents to live in Baltimore City. How do you make it easier and more cost-effective for small nonprofit entities that host these events?
So as a councilman in West Baltimore, I had the ability, and I'm really excited about this, of attracting the folk, Charm City Folk and Bluegrass Festival to Druid Hill Park. And I remember when I took it to Rex and Parks and I sat down with folks, they thought we were absolutely crazy to do a folk and bluegrass festival in the middle of Druid Hill Park. Well, we started out with about 1,800 folks, and this year we expect to eclipse maybe 4,000 folks to visit this one-day attraction to Druid Hill Park. When we talk about the city of Baltimore, we talk about a very unique knit of amazing communities and amazing cultures with a lot of history behind them. And the one jewel that we have in the city of Baltimore is that. You know, when you go to places like maybe Manhattan or DC, you lose that because of the transient folks that have come in and come out of those communities. The city of Baltimore has to do a much better job of partnering with our neighborhoods and our associations and our organizations to not nickel and dime them as it relates to permits and fees. I never forget when we first did the Bluegrass and Folk Festival, They charged us $25 for every generator that was on the property